To watch these important lessons, subscribe to DP Education's YouTube channel right now. Click on the bell icon to stay updated on the latest lessons. Sri Lanka's largest free online school, DP Education.
So my dear children, in the earlier chapter, we got a brief idea about what does the biodiversity is. So what kind of a thing is this biodiversity? So we discussed in the earlier chapter that biodiversity is the differences between organisms and ecosystems, and also differences between organisms in the same species. So we divided the biodiversity into several categories like ecosystem diversity, species diversity, and the genetical diversity. Now within this chapter, we'll be mainly focusing about the importance of biodiversity, right? So here you are given with a point first. Both large and small creatures in an ecosystem play a significant role in maintaining the equilibrium of the certain ecosystem. So when you take a certain ecosystem, not only smaller ones but also larger creatures, they play a certain role in maintaining the equilibrium of the ecosystem. Now let's take an environment where there are rabbits and lions, right? So in that particular environment, there are rabbits and lions. So you know that lions are feeding on rabbits, and also rabbits have the ability to eat grass and all other plant parts. So there is a certain balance in the environment. If rabbits are going to disappear, then lions are also going to disappear. If plants are going to disappear, then rabbits are disappearing, then lions are also going to disappear. I mean, like, their number is going to reduce. Okay. So there is a certain balance between the environment. Rabbits have a higher rate of reproduction compared to the lions, because you know that more amount of rabbits are getting hunted by the lions. So there is a certain equilibrium in the ecosystem, right? When you take a certain ecosystem, each and every creature is very important for the environment. Let's imagine that in the same environment, there are no any lions or any other carnivorous animals. Okay, there are no any other carnivorous animals in that particular environment. Then what will happen? The number of rabbits will tend to increase, and their reproduction rate is also high. So therefore, within few months, large number of rabbits will get reproduced from time to time. In that case, the whole forest or the environment will get destroyed for sure. So each and every creature is very important. We might think that the lions, those things are carnivorous animals. So those lions are not suitable for an environment. But however, if you remove lions or carnivorous animals from a certain environment, then the number of herbivorous animals are going to increase. That means the ecosystem is out of balance. Okay, so in order to have a certain equilibrium within the environment or within an ecosystem, each and every creature is very important. Okay, so here, higher biodiversity in an ecosystem also increases the well-being and the stability of that ecosystem. Now what is that? That means, my dear children, instead of one particular organism, let's imagine that there are different organisms, different herbivorous animals within the same environment. Like there are rabbits, goats, cows, and so on. And there are different kinds of plants like grasses, herbs, creepers, and large trees, and so on. Simply, this is like a forest. So within a forest, you know that there are different kinds of carnivorous species, herbivorous species, and there are different kinds of plants as well. So in that case, my dear children, the stability of the ecosystem is pretty much saved. It's because of the number of organisms who are living. Okay, when increasing the number of organisms, during the increasement of species, when increasing the species, number of species, right, the stability of the environment is also going to increase. I mean, like, those things are well balanced. It's under good equilibrium. Okay. So my dear children, each and every creature is playing a good role playing a good role in maintaining the equilibrium of a certain ecosystem, and also this equilibrium, the stability of the environment is also going to increase when increasing the number of organisms and the species count in a particular environment. Okay, so here once more given, the beauty of the environment increases due to biodiversity. We know that Sri Lanka is a country with a reach of biodiversity. So you know that with the increasement of different number of organisms living in a particular environment, the beauty of the environment is going to increase. We would love to visit a forest like Yala Vilpattu, right? Why is that? Because there are organisms that we won't be able to observe in our normal rural or else urban areas. So that's why we are going to visit like forest, right? So there's a vast diversity. The vast diversity is going to help to increase the beauty of a certain environment, right? So it would increase the certain beauty in an environment. You know that Sri Lanka is also having those kinds of places where the biodiversity is very rich. So therefore, Sri Lanka is also considered as a country that has a rich biodiversity. So Sri Lanka has been named as the country with the highest density of flowering plants, reptiles, amphibians, and mammals in the Asian region. So when you take the Asian region, my dear children, Sri Lanka is named as the highest country, right? It is named as the country with the highest density. Okay, the density of having different types of species is very high in Sri Lanka. Okay, so it has named as the country that has the highest density of flowering plants, reptiles, amphibians, and so on, right? When you take the Asian region. So rich biodiversity is a strong reason for tourist attraction. So this rich in biodiversity is a strong reason for the tourist attraction. Several tourists will come to Sri Lanka, will visit Sri Lanka because of this enriched biodiversity. Okay, this enriched biodiversity will help to develop our Sri Lanka as a one particular nation. Okay, so it's very important to protect our biodiversity, right? It's very important to protect the organisms, animals, plants, each and every component in an ecosystem in order to save this rich environment, in order to save this rich biodiversity, my dear children. Okay, right then. So biodiversity has reduced the competition between species. Organisms are always in a competition for their needs. Now, the competition, okay, the competition between organisms. So this competition is the main reason for the, for the extinction, and also not only now extinction is the permanent eradication of organism from a particular area, that's extinction, right? Competition is also going to help for the extinction of a certain organism, and also not only that, due to having a certain competition, right, a certain types of organisms will not be able to receive their needful amount of nutrition, shelter, and so on, these things. Only selected organisms will be able to receive them. Okay, but what will happen if the number of organisms, if the biodiversity, right, if the density of the biodiversity or creatures or the organisms is going to increase in a particular area, then my dear children, the competition is going to reduce. How come? Let me give you an example like this. So in a particular area, I'll take the previous example which I took. In a certain environment, there are rabbits and lions only. There are no any other. So lions would have to eat only rabbits. So let's take that there are 50 lions and there are hundreds of rabbits. Okay. So among these 50 lions, there are only type of food available in that particular environment is flesh of rabbits. However, as there are like hundreds, right, and also those organisms are somewhat smaller, lions will be able to like catch one or two. Okay, lions will be able to catch like one or two rabbits. Okay, so they would have to thrive on those one or two rabbits. However, my dear children, when catching one or two rabbits, the others will definitely going to hide on certain places. Then some number of lions will be able to get food and the others will not. So in that's the reason, that's in here we can say that that's the competition, right? It's a clear competition now. So sometimes these lions will now fight each other to get or to obtain the food that they need. Now let's take the same environment and we'll increase the density of organisms. We'll take that there are certain other types of organisms as well, like cows, deers, and so on. In that case, my dear children, lions will have the ability to prey a different kind of an organism, except rabbits. Rabbits are also being hunted, but however, as there are several opportunities, as there are several incidents, or as there are several examples, right, lions can thrive or lions can have different other kinds of foods as well. One particular lion will hunt for a cow, another one will hunt for a deer, another one will hunt for a rabbit. In that case, my dear children, the competition for the food is getting minimized. Competition for the food is getting minimized. Not only for the food, this is available for the shelter as well, right? And also for the other factors too. So this is just a brief explanation on how to reduce the competition for the different needs when increasing the biodiversity. Okay. Then the next one given, when considering the plant world, they competing for the needs that should be used from the environment, such as light, space, water, and air. So that's for the animals now. For the plants also, same thing can be observed. How come? Let's take a certain environment. Let's take a rambutan tree. Rambutan. So, a rambutan tree produces large number of rambutan seeds from the fruit of it. Okay. So, you know that rambutan plant is going to drop down the seeds here and there near the rambutan plant, the main plant or the mother plant. So near the mother plant, my dear children, for a one particular season, large number of rambutan plants will occur, smaller ones. But however, when time is going to pass by, you would observe that only one or two is going to survive. Why is that? Because all the others are going to die, mainly because of the competition. Like, what kind of a competition? Are they going to compete each other, fight each other? They are, but not physically, but for the necessary factors like the water, sunlight, nutrition. Nutrition means actually in here fertilizer, and all the other factors too. Right? So you know that they are growing under a mother plant now. So they won't be able to absorb needful amount of sunlight. In that case, they will definitely die. Okay. That's why, my dear children, plants are going to produce fruits that are edible. Okay, that are edible. So animals are going to consume these fruits, and the leftover part will be the seeds. So that's how they are going to spread their kind here and there, so that they can find out, or so that they can reduce the competition for needful things. Okay. So my dear children, for plants also, it's very important to have factors like sunlight, air, water, and so on. Okay. These factors are very important for their survival. So plants also compete in order to obtain these factors. So these factors this competition can be minimized if there is a good environment, a large environment with rich biodiversity. Okay. Then when considering the animal world, animals are competing for requirements such as habitat, food security, choice of partners. So not only for the food, my dear children, these are the other areas where the animals are going to compete. So what are those? Habitat, living places. For the habitats, they are going to fight, they are going to compete. Then security, for the security also. Then for the choice of partners, like their sexual partners during the reproduction time period, right, to find out a certain mate, right, they would compete. I think you have heard about the stories regarding these organisms who are going to compete for their partners, right? So these things can be observed mainly among the competition. So these are favorable factors for their survival. So this competition is getting reduced if there are a large number of organisms in the environment. Okay, not in the same species, but in all other different species, my dear children. So biodiversity will help to reduce the competition for these sectors, for animals and as well as for plants in these sectors like light, space, water and air. Okay, so this is an importance of biodiversity, a very good benefit of biodiversity. Okay, right. So this is the minimization of competition between species. Then the next one, trees to minimize the competition for water. The roots of different trees are adapted to make water from different levels in the soil. And now one particular competition is for the competition for water. Competition for water. So when you take the competition for water, water is absorbed by roots of the plants. So to minimize the competition for water, plants have adapted to have different kinds of root systems, so that they can find water efficiently and quickly by reducing the competition. So as you can see here, different types of root systems can be observed. So these large trees, they have widely spreaded root system that runs along the surface of the earth. Then some might have deeply rooted plants like this, right? So sometimes to absorb water, they would, right, or these plants would create roots that have the ability to absorb water from the atmosphere as in the form of water vapor. So this is the example for those kinds of things. So different roots, different types of roots, like deeply rooted ones, the roots which are running on surfaces, and also the roots which are hanging here and there, which have the ability to absorb water vapor from the atmosphere. So these adaptations is going to reduce the competition for water. Okay, so this helps to reduce the competition as they have differences. This is about the biodiversity, right? This is about the biodiversity. So they have different root systems. That means they show a biodiversity, species diversity, right? So therefore, my dear children, we are talking about here about the biodiversity. So because of the biodiversity, they have different root systems. Because of having different root systems, they have the ability to reduce the competition for water. Okay, right then. Next one, we know that the beaks of different bird species are of different shapes. This is important to reduce the competition for food. Various birds depend on various foods, and their beaks are shaped according to their diet. Parrot over here, it has a curved beak like this. Why? You know that parrot are omnivore organisms, right? Means that they can depend on small insects like beetles, and also they can depend on grains. So to crush grains and to capture grains very quickly, and also to capture those smaller organisms, right, like beetles, they have a curved beak like this. Okay. Then the next one, hawk. Hawk has a sharp, pointed, strong beak so that they can tear down food, flesh, very quickly. Okay. Duck, a curved, flat beak so that they can feed on fish. Then the hummingbird, a long, thin beak to suck nectar from flowers. Okay. So as for the need of food, their shape of the beak and the strength, and not only shape and the strength, but the length and other factors are also going to differ from one particular organism to another, my dear children. So we are talking about the differences here. Differences means, my dear children, the biodiversity. Why they have differences? Because upon having different beak types, they can feed on different kinds of food. Upon having different kinds of food, the competition is getting minimized. Okay. Right then, the wild types of most plants and animals used in agriculture are found in natural ecosystems. The wild types of most plants and animals are used in agriculture are found in natural ecosystems. So, genes that are resistant to pests, adverse environmental conditions, illnesses are available in these wild types. Okay. So here it is given, my dear children, wild types of the most plants and animals used in agriculture are found in natural ecosystems. Okay. In natural ecosystems, we can find out these wild types. These wild types are also helpful to generate or to get genes that are resistant to pests, adverse environmental conditions, and illnesses. Okay. So because of biodiversity, it is possible to use these genetic materials in a favorable manner in agriculture. So my dear children, we have even discussed these things in the previous grades. I think you can remember when we are discussing about the life cycles, we discussed about their different stages. And within those stages, we discussed that by using their life cycle, we can control. Right? By using their life cycle, we can control the pest conditions. Not only that, right? Nowadays, my dear children, okay, nowadays, genetically modified organisms have been developed. Now, these genetically modified organisms are created by the wild types, okay, because they have the genes in order to resist, right? Like the factors, illnesses, then pests, and so on. So by taking those genes, we can recombine these genes with other organisms so that they would have the same properties. In that case, my dear children, right, we have the ability to generate good number of or good amount of harvest, right? It's mainly because that they have the resistance to fight against these unfavorable factors. So where do we receive these genes from? Because those things have differences, or those initial organisms have genetic diversity. So you know that the genetic diversity, my dear children, is a part of biodiversity. So genetical diversity, this is a helpful thing that we can observe within genetical diversity, right? So these genes would help to defeat or to compete against unfavorable factors. So when we recombine these genes with other organisms, they would also have the same ability. So these genes are obtained from genetical diversity, which is a main component in biodiversity. Okay, so it would mainly help to fight against adverse environmental conditions. This biodiversity also helpful to fight against adverse environmental conditions. Right there. Due to biodiversity, some species are endemic to each region. Species that can be seen only in one geographical region or country are known as endemic species. Humans conserve these endemic species due to this rich biodiversity. Now, the other thing is endemic organisms, indigenous organisms, endemic plants and animals. So endemic means, my dear children, for a certain area or to a certain country, these organisms are limited. Okay, organisms are only seen in that particular region or that particular area. Okay, so those kinds of organisms are referred as indigenous or else endemic organisms, right? So due to biodiversity, right, mainly because of the biodiversity, right, when you take the ecosystems, certain ecosystems, though there are some types of organisms which can only live on a certain particular ecosystem. For a simple example we'll take fish. Fish can live on only water, no? So they won't have the ability to live on land or in terrestrial environments, right? So fish is going to live on water only, right? So that is a certain type of an ecosystem. So within that ecosystem, fish are going to live within water. They won't be able to live on land. So my dear children, fish are limited to only water. In the same way, for a certain type of an ecosystem, there can be some organisms which are available in that ecosystem only. So that kind of an organism is simply called as an endemic organism. Limited to that ecosystem only. Within, I told you that at the beginning of the lesson, ecosystems are going to differ from one to another, no? We won't be able to observe the same ecosystem in a different place. So number of organisms, or a particular organism who is going to live on a particular kind of an ecosystem can only be found, sometimes can only be found on that particular environment only. Okay, if so, then that particular organism is referred as an endemic one. It's because observed in that particular environment only, right? So humans conserve these endemic species due to this rich biodiversity. So because of that having rich biodiversity, humans, like we, the people, they are going to protect those areas. Okay, and they're going to protect those species. So you are given with several figures for some species endemic to Sri Lanka. Blue magpie, jungle fowl, rilava, bandulapetia, it's a freshwater fish, and also ashokapetia. Bandulapetia and ashokapetia, those two are freshwater fish. Okay, then the green pit viper. So these organisms are endemic to Sri Lanka, means that these organisms can only found in Sri Lanka, my dear children, right? Only found in Sri Lanka. These organisms are only found in Sri Lanka. That's why these organisms are endemic. Okay, right. Then because of having these, or because of having endemic organisms, okay, because of having endemic species like these, it would also attract tourists, because tourists will not be able to observe these organisms in their country, no. So they would have to visit our country to observe. For another simple example, we'll take the kangaroo. You know about the kangaroo, right? So we won't be able to observe kangaroo in Sri Lanka. So in order to observe kangaroo, we have to visit Australia. In order to observe kangaroo from your naked eye, you have to visit, definitely you should have to visit Australia. Okay, so that's the case in here. A simple example, because for a certain country those organisms are limited. So in that case, tourist attraction will also going to increase if there are good number of endemic species. So our responsibility and duty to protect these endemic species, because these organisms are only found in a certain environment. Okay, right then. This biodiversity helps to protect the water resources and soil to maintain favorable climatic conditions and minimize the environmental pollution. Biodiversity is very important for entertainment, various research, works, and educational activities. Right. So the next one is it minimizes the environment pollution. You know that our nature, when you take our nature, my dear children, our nature consists of different kinds of ecosystems and also species. So naturally made ecosystems mainly, they would protect each species, right? How come? By providing all the necessary factors, right? By providing all the necessary factors for their survival is ensured. In that case, my dear children, you know that, right? When you take, if the survival is ensured, then you know that for sure a particular organism or species can thrive on or can live on a certain environment without any trouble. So biodiversity also helpful to maintain what? To maintain the optimum environmental conditions without any pollution, and also it reduces the environmental pollution. Okay. Then the next one, biodiversity is very important for the entertainment. Now, why do we go for the field trips? In order to relax our mind, right? We visit for a field trip. We are going to go for a trip, a certain kind of a trip. Even in your schools, after like fed up you, right? You guys are going for a trip. Why is that? It's mainly because by looking at those things, right? The pleasure that we receive is unimaginable, my dear children. Right? The pleasure that we receive is unimaginable. It's mainly now by looking at those places like seashores, the waves which are coming. Then if you visit a mangrove environment, the organisms who are living. If you visit a certain seashore with corals, then by looking at the organisms like the fishes, special kinds of fishes who are living in that places, our pleasure, our like our mental stability. So those things are going to our pleasure and mental stability, those things are going to going for a favorable condition. I mean, like their stability, the mental stability and the pleasure is going to increase. Okay, so it would help for our entertainment as well. And also not only for the entertainment, my dear children, we can study about these organisms. We can identify special features by looking at these organisms. Like we will be able to study about these things. Even the things that we study within these lessons, like vertebrates, invertebrates, then their internal structures, all of these things are studied by scientists and given for you guys. So for academic purposes also, biodiversity is very important, right? Biodiversity is very important for the academic purposes also, and also for researchers. Sometimes some organisms have the ability to destroy certain types of bacteriums. So we can research on those organisms. We can find out new medicines that would help to build up the mankind, or else not only the mankind, not only for the humans, but also for other organisms who are living in a certain environment. Okay, so by doing certain types of researchers, right, people will be able to help different kinds of species. Let me tell you an example for that. Have you heard about the shark? Shark is an organism, a type of a fish that has very less or no cancer cells. Now, when you take the human population, the main and the deadliest a main and a deadliest disease condition is a cancer, right? There are no certain permanent treatment for cancer. So, however, nowadays by using the genetical engineering and technology, scientists are going to develop for a cure, I mean like genetically modified cure by using genes of sharks. It's because that sharks have the natural ability to destroy cancer cells that are going to produce within their bodies naturally. Okay. However, we won't have that ability. So we can get so the scientists are now planning to get those genes from sharks and to generate a vaccine or some kind of a medicine in order to defeat cancers. Okay. Research conditions, researchers. So not only for the academic and entertainment, but also for researchers like that. This biodiversity is very important, my dear children. Okay. Right. So these are the main areas or main key things regarding the importance. Okay. Right then. Right. So we have discussed several things related to the what? We discussed several things related to the importance of biodiversity, my dear children. Now, we studied about the definition or the brief introduction for the biodiversity. Then we studied about the importance related to the importance or the key things, right? Benefits of biodiversity. Now, my dear children, we are going to discuss about what are the threats, right? What are the threats for the biodiversity? What are the factors that are going to reduce or threaten the biodiversity? These are the ones now we are going to study. So here it is given, there are many threats for biodiversity. These threats have caused a deterioration in biodiversity. So the reasons for biodegradation can be discussed under two topics. So there are several reasons, my dear children. At the very beginning of the lesson, I told you that there are several reasons for the reduction in biodiversity. Degradation of biodiversity happens mainly following two topics. So those two main topics are natural reasons and the human activities. At the very beginning, we discussed about these two, right? I think you could remember. So natural reasons. What are the natural reasons? Actually, these are natural disasters, my dear children. So because of the natural disasters, large number of organisms will die. So if they die, then my dear children, the differences or the number of organisms will get reduced. So when during the reduction of number of organisms, it's obvious to us that the differences between the organisms or the differences between types of organisms are also going to reduce. Okay. So because of having natural disasters like floods, droughts, and so on, right? These factors will definitely reduce or deteriorate the biodiversity. It will definitely reduce the biodiversity. Then the second one would be the human activities. Now, when you take human activities, my dear children, human activities are the ones which are going to play a main role in the reduction of biodiversity. Mainly sometimes when you take natural disasters, some natural disasters are also going to cause because of the human activities. Okay. For a certain example, when we take climatic changes, the main reason for climatic change in our earth is the imbalance between gases in our atmosphere, right? So you know that there are plenty of greenhouse gases which are going to emit nowadays because of factories, vehicles, and other instruments and so on, right? So these gases, impure gases or else greenhouse gases, they would cause different environmental problems like ozone layer depletion. So combinedly, they would create climatic changes. Okay. So my dear children, human activities play a main role, or they will play a main role. These things play a main role in changing or in reduction of the biodiversity. Sometimes for the causing of natural disasters also, these human activities are going to be a factor. Okay, right then. So these are the two main topics. However, we'll be discussing about natural reasons, and however we'll be discussing natural reasons under a main topic. But remember, most of human activities are also going to influence to create natural reasons or natural disasters. Okay, right. So these two are the main two topics that we are going to discuss under the threats of biodiversity. Okay, right then. So first of all, we'll focus about the natural threats to biodiversity. Since ancient times, biodiversity has been affected by the impact of various natural activities. Not in nowadays, my dear children, but during from the ancient times. Okay, I think you have heard about the apocalypse, right? World apocalypse, the end of the world, right? Actually, it has happened. Like up to 80% of the organisms have been eradicated because of different reasons. Not now, but in the ancient times, because of different natural reasons. Okay, so I think you have heard about the meteor collapsed to our earth, right, which eradicated all the dinosaurs from our planet earth. Okay, which eradicated all the dinosaurs from our planet earth. That meteor collide was the main reason for that eradication, my dear children. So because of that meteoroid, like 80% of the population was destroyed. Population means all the species in here which was living on the planet earth was destroyed. And then came climatic changes. The reason for the destruction of or the extinction of mammoths, climatic changes. Okay, then my dear children, like that way there were several incidents where the eradication of organisms were happened in the ancient times. Okay, these were just two examples. There are like more. Find out these details. You can Google it to find out. Okay, about the apocalypses, post apocalypses, right? Then, so since ancient time, biodiversity has been affected by impacts of aerial natural activities. So we can define these natural activities, or we can provide natural activities or natural threats for the biodiversity like this. First one given, collapse in meteoroids, right? Collapse in meteors. Then volcanic explosions, tsunami waves, earth slides, floods, and climatic changes. Even though climatic changes are mainly happening because of human activities, it's been considered as a natural factor, right? Because those things are governed by the nature, no? Right. So these are the main natural threats for the biodiversity. Collapse in meteoroids, volcanic explosions, tsunami waves, earth slides, floods, climatic changes. Not only that, we can take drought seasons, right? And also cyclones, typhoons, tornadoes, then earthquakes, right? Those things can also be taken, right? Okay, then it is considered that a meteor collapse caused for the extinction of dinosaurs. So like I said in the earlier case, my dear children, the extinction of dinosaurs, and with that there were several organisms who were eradicated from the planet earth, right? So that incident or that eradication happened mainly because of a meteoroid that was collapsed during the ancient times, right? So dinosaurs were completely eradicated because of that. Then the next one, there is an argument that natural global warming was the reason for the extinction of mammoth. So global warming, right? Change in climatic patterns. There's an argument, right? Actually, it's haven't been proved yet. However, there is an argument that the natural global warming procedure is the reason for the extinction of mammoth. Right? Mammoths were extinct because of that. There's an argument. Okay. Right. So these are several organisms that were extinct because of these natural reasons, my dear children. So not only that, these are for natural reasons, no. Are there any organisms who were eradicated from the earth or who were extinct from the earth because of human reasons? Of course there is, right? A good example is dodo bird. The bird called dodo eradicated from the planet Earth because of excessive hunting. Okay, excessive hunting means here humans were the ones who were hunting those organisms. Dodo bird. Okay, so dodo bird was eradicated or extinct from the earth because of the excessive hunting, right? So that was a human activity, my dear children. An example for the extinct animal because of human activity, right? So that's all about with the natural threats. Now we are going to discuss about the human activities or human threats to biodiversity. So with the rapid increase in the human population, forests are destroyed extensively to meet their needs. Rapid deforestation destruct the habitat of living organisms. Also, the construction of various buildings, streets, reservoirs splits the habitats of living organisms. So you know that people or human population, right? People or human population in simple. Human population is going to increase from day by day. Day by day, the human population is getting increased. So, human population should have habitats. When they are living, they should have to have habitats, no? So, to obtain habitats, my dear children, right? What will happen? Human or people will destroy forests, and this rapid deforestation is going to be a main reason for the destruction of habitats of other organisms, right? So we'll take a forest. Now the number of forest or the density of the forest in the ancient times was very high because of the less population. Now when increasing the number of people or when increasing the human population, these forest count or the density of the forests are also going to reduced gradually, right? It's mainly now they would also need to have habitats. So in that case, we have to remove those areas with plants. Okay, plants should be removed down, and we have to build our houses. There's no any other option. So when removing these plants and other areas, what will happen? The habitats of other organisms are going to disappear. Okay, because of that, what will happen? Those organisms will not be able to survive or fit in those environments, and that would also lead to other complications as well. Nowadays, you know that there is a certain fight going on with elephants and people. It's mainly because of the overpopulation, right? Or because of the overpopulation, people are going to do deforestation, and elephants will lose their habitat, and because of losing habitats, their food is also going to reduce. So the elephants will come to our lands and they will have their food from our agricultural lands. So there is no possible way to stop it, right? So my dear children, this excess population is a main factor, right, for a threat of biodiversity, So not only for making habitats, but also when we are living, my dear children, we have to get different other needs. Like we have to get water, we have to get power like electricity. In that case, certain rivers are blocked by using dams. So when those things are blocked, what will happen? The people or the organisms who are living at the down area or lower areas, lower lands, will not be able to get water. So in that case also, they would, what will happen? They would get destroyed. So that is also going to happen mainly because of increase of population. So with the increasement of the population, right, people would have to go for other different types of power sources to generate electricity and in order to get enough amount of energy. Okay, so that would also lead to destroy habitats of other organisms. Then the next one, the increase in human population causes many environmental issues. Overuse of resources and addition of pollutants to the environment are often caused by human activities. Then the next one, my dear children, right? It's very obvious one. By just looking at the sentence given, you can get a certain idea. This is talking about the environment pollution because of the disposal of garbage into the environment. So with the overpopulation, my dear children, the number of things that we are going to consume is also going to increase. When increasing these artificial made things, and if we are not going to dispose those things accurately or correctly to the environment, then that case, my dear children, the environment pollution will happen, especially water pollution and the soil pollution. In that case, what will happen? The organisms who are living in water will not be able to live. If they are going to live, then my dear children, they would have different diseases. And because of having diseases for those organisms, the others who are depending on those organisms will also catch with these diseases. So that would definitely threat the biodiversity. Okay, the environment pollution will definitely threat the biodiversity. For a simple example, you know that large number of polythene bags and plastic is going to dispose to the environment because of overpopulated because of the overpopulated regions. Okay, so in that regions, the cows and if there are elephants, then those organisms will eat those plastic and polythene with the leftover food parts. Then what will happen, my dear children? Then plastic and polythene will trap within the digestive systems and the organisms will die. Okay, so a simple example where we can observe this threat because of the improper disposal of these things, artificial things. Then the next one, soil, aquatic and airy ecosystems get so polluted. Soil, aquatic, airy ecosystems. Okay, so not only for water and for soil, but also airy ecosystems like our atmosphere. So you know that within our atmosphere, there is a favorable condition so that the organisms would get oxygen gas without any trouble. But however, nowadays, because of emission of greenhouse gases plus smoke of the vehicles and factories, right, we won't be able to get a good amount of fresh breath for us also. And then what will happen to the animals? Animals will also get the same fate. Okay, so because of the overpopulation, my dear children, the number of machines, vehicles that we use is also going to increase. So day by day, the amount of toxic gases, the amount of pollutants that we add to the environment is also going to increase, right? So day by day, the biodiversity is getting reduced within our environment. There's no certain thing to do it, right? There's no certain thing to do. I mean, as a remedy, we won't be able to do any kind of a thing. If so, then we have to reduce the number or reduce the things that we use. Okay, that's the proper way to do actually. We won't be able to compete with the nature. There's no certain way to compete with the nature, my dear children. The best thing to do is obey to the rules of nature and live your life. Okay, so here once again it is given: soil, aquatic and airy ecosystems get so polluted and these ecosystems become unsuitable for survival of organisms. These reasons have a strong impact on biodiversity. Now, let's take another example. Have you heard about the Chernobyl accident? So over there, in Russian Federation, I mean in the Soviet Union, there was an explosion. Nuclear power plant got exploded because of a human error, right? So that power plant was the one which I have told earlier, which is called as the Chernobyl. So because of the explosion of Chernobyl, like radius up to 30 kilometer, all the environment organisms were killed, right? Actually killed because they absorbed plenty of radiation. So these organisms were killed by the humans. Okay, even for today we won't be able to, I mean like people will not be able to go and visit there. However, there are animals, because they don't know that there is a risk of that kind of a risk is there, right? So that particular environment is for today is not habitable. Okay, so upon releasing like these kinds of various things to the environment, right, what will happen? Our balance in the ecosystems is going to reduce. The number of ecosystems are going to reduce. So in that case, my dear children, right, the main reason for this thing is the overpopulation. When there are plenty of living people, they should have to have electricity, water and other energy sources and also needful things, right? So when providing these needful things for the people by a certain government, there can be complications like that. Okay, so in that case, my dear children, ecosystems will get destroyed. Because of destroying ecosystems, organisms will get destroyed. So definitely that will threat the biodiversity, right? So overpopulation is a main reason to have certain types of threats created by the humans which threatens the biodiversity. Right then, spreading of invasive organisms in an ecosystem too make a strong impact on its biodiversity. Now, my dear children, mainly because of that environment pollution thing, disposal of different types of, right, disposal of different types of pollutants, what will happen? The organisms who can thrive on those things will get increase. Okay, the organisms who are like there, if there is a certain type of organism which would love to eat plastic or polythene, then what will happen? Upon disposal of plastic and polythene, the number of organisms who are going to thrive on those things will definitely going to increase. So if a certain number, right, if a certain type of an organism who is going to increase like invasively, I mean like their reproduction rate is going to be so high so that they would thrive on whole environment. Okay, so in that kind of an organism who is going to spread all around the environment without a limit can be considered as an invasive organism. Okay, invasive organism. Without any limit, they are going to spread at a higher rate, very higher rate, mainly because of the pollutants and other different substances that we put into the environment. So spread of invasive organisms is also going to be an imbalance, right? It will also imbalance the environment. I mean like it will create an improper improper balance or else an improper condition to our environments, I mean like ecosystems. Okay, so these invasive organisms that we can observe are Gandapana, right? Gandapana, a plant, the most common plant that we can observe like each and every place, my dear children, Gandapana, right? So this is an invasive plant, right? Then Parthenium plant, Parthenium plant. Once again, you can observe Parthenium in like each and every place right now. Then the tank cleaner fish, even we like, you know, like as a pet fish, like in our tanks, we have this one. Okay, however, it is an invasive organism. Then the fish called Mannava, right? So these organisms are, right, invasive. These organisms are invasive, my dear children. I mean like they are going to spread in a particular environment without a limit, because of receiving different kinds of pollutants to the environment. Because of receiving those pollutants, they would thrive on those pollutants very well. So therefore, favorable factors for these organisms will get increased. So therefore, the count will also get increased from time to time. Okay, right. So these are invasive organisms. So invasive organisms are also going to increase mainly because of human activities like improper disposal of garbage, right? Okay, right. So the next one, my dear children, the next one is given here, the next human threat for the biodiversity. Okay, let's see what is that. The introduction of genetically modified new organisms into the environment cause adverse impact on biodiversity. Although it is not yet possible to specify this, these organisms can be considered as a threat to biodiversity in the future. Now, my dear children, you know that by modifying genes, I mean like DNA in particular organism, we have the ability to introduce a new organism to a certain environment. Especially now these things are being carried out for the plants. Like when we are giving birth to, or when we are producing new plants that has the resistance to fight against pests. Okay, here we use genetically modified several genes which are being modified, and we are injecting those things to that particular plant or any other type of animal, right? Animals, actually animals, we don't use these things on animals. I mean like those things are not ethical, and we don't have the permission. The people don't have, scientists don't have the permission to do that in these days. But however, for the plants, you know that for these, within these days, my dear children, for plants we use this thing, the genetical modification, right? That's how we receive this much of food. Sometimes for organisms also, sometimes for animals also, we do this thing. Now when you take chicken, higher growth, right? That higher growth is mainly because of the chemicals and the substances that we provide externally to that particular organism, right? So that would create like the DNA or the internal structure will get different, right? From natural organism to the artificial one. So in that case, my dear children, what will happen? These genetically modified organisms, we can consider those things as genetically modified organism, because we use chemicals, right? So from that chemicals, we increase or decrease the growth rate. So it's a genetically modified organism. So not only that, right? The other thing is there are beneficial things as well, right? However, we have to think about the opposite side as well. Okay, so there are adverse effects. However, these things are not being proved yet. So there is a discussion that these things will harm the organisms or the biodiversity in near future. Okay, then the next one, climatic changes caused due to human activities like environmental problems such as ozone layer depletion, global warming will affect the biodiversity. So this was actually discussed earlier, right? So like I said, my dear children, due to or emission of greenhouse gases due to emission of heavy amount of carbon dioxide, right, and other toxic gases to the environment due to disposal of garbage, right, different types of garbage. Different environmental problems will create, such as ozone layer depletion, water pollution, air pollution, and so on. So these things are also going to threat the biodiversity. Okay, these things are also going to threat the biodiversity. Even though those things are environment related factors, right, human activities are the main reasons for change of these environmental factors. Okay, right then. These threats have caused biodiversity degradation, right? So the factors that we discussed earlier, they have degraded the biodiversity, right? So the degradation of biodiversity is mainly going to happen because of those threats, my dear children. So hence some species of organisms are in a threat of extinction from the earth. So my dear children, the other thing is that this degradation can observe not only to a particular area, not only to a certain ecosystem, but it is worldwide. Worldwide degradation can be observed. Okay, so this implies that because of the degradation of this biodiversity, my dear children, some organisms has the threat of extinction as well. There are some organisms that are threat to extinction, that have a threat, okay, that have the threat or that have the ability to get extinct in the near future. It's because that they have very less, these organisms are surviving at a very less number, my dear children. Okay, there is very less number. So the problem is we have to protect these organisms. Otherwise, we won't be able to see that organism in our near future. Okay, so that would terribly, right? That would terribly reduce the biodiversity in a particular region. So here it is given, some species of organisms are in a threat of extinction from the earth. Therefore, biodiversity should be conserved. So it's important to conserve the biodiversity. In the next point given, the regions of higher density of living organisms are called hotspots. Now, regions that has high density of living organisms are called as hotspots. Hotspots, right? To be considered as a biodiversity hotspot, a country or a region should be rich with high proportion of indigenous species and species with more threats. And now, in order to consider as a hotspot, my dear children, that particular region or a country should have rich with high proportion of indigenous species. That means there should be plants or animals that are unique to that particular ecosystem, indigenous ones. So there should be good proportion of indigenous plants and other types of organisms, and a species with more threats. And also there should be species that has a threat, right? I mean, like there should be number of organisms, there should be animals who are living in a particular area that are limited to that particular environment, indigenous, and also their count to also be somewhat reduced. Okay, count should be also reduced. Reduced means at a minimum count, the count should be minimum. Okay, so here, as Sri Lanka belongs to a hotspot region, it is our duty to contribute for the conservation of biodiversity. Now, the other main factor is, my dear children, when you take Sri Lanka is considered as a hotspot. That means there are some certain types of animals which are indigenous to Sri Lanka, and also their count is very less, right? That means if those organisms if those organisms, if those less number of organisms died, if they are going to die, then we won't be able to observe those organisms in any other country. Okay, so therefore it's our duty and responsibility to conserve these organisms, to conserve our ecosystems, to conserve our environment. So by that we can protect these organisms. Okay, right. Following are some threats for biodiversity. Now you are given with an assignment, a simple assignment. Following are some threats for biodiversity. Collect information on each topic and prepare an article for a newspaper, right? So these are several threats. So under these threats, my dear children, you have to collect information. Like when you take increase of human population, how it would threaten the biodiversity. You have to find out details for that. So when I was discussing those things, I explained to you, like when increasing the number of population or during the increase of population, what are the special conditions that will arise, and because of that, how does the balance between the environment or balance of the environment is going to reduce, or it's going to imbalance. Okay, and how that imbalanceness will help to reduce the biodiversity. We discussed those things, right? Then like that you have to find out reasons or more information about destruction of forest, how the destruction of forest is going to reduce the biodiversity. Okay, we discussed that increase of human population, like when increase in human population, the needs of the population will also going to increase. Humans are, right, greedy ones, somewhat greedy ones, humans. That's our nature, right? That's our behavior, that's our natural behavior, nature. So we are going to find, or we are heavily dependent on different kinds of energy types, sources of energy. So upon getting this energy and energy sources, my dear children, some habitats are going to destroy, right? Water and other ecosystems, soil, air is going to pollute, right? Not only that, because of the emission of greenhouse gases, because of the industries, and also from the vehicles and the machines that we use, right? During the increasement of population, what will happen? These toxic gases and all the other substances released to the environment will create different climatic problems, like ozone layer depletion. So these things would definitely threats the biodiversity. Okay, then the next one, destruction of forest. What will happen with the destruction of forest? So destruction of forest, we can find like this, we can give information like this, my dear children. With the destruction of forests, habitat of the organisms, simply for the animals, is going to reduce, right? Animals are going to die because of that. So with less number of habitats that the animals have, the competition is also going to reduce. So that also destroys some amount of or some number of organisms, right? So definitely with the deforestation, definitely, my dear children, what will happen? The biodiversity, the concentration of the biodiversity is going to reduce, right? Then the next one given, introduction of invasive organisms. So because of the invasive organisms, if you take a certain land or else a certain ecosystem, as they are having plenty of favorable factors, these invasive organisms grow without any limit. So other organisms will not be able to survive because of lack of favorable conditions. So because of that, the other organisms will definitely eradicate from that particular ecosystem. So introduction of invasive organisms is also going to threaten the biodiversity. Then the next one, the environmental pollution. So there is a vast area about the environment pollution. We can write like many environmental related problems from the environment pollution, my dear children, right? But I'll give you like one or two. One environmental problem is water pollution. happens mainly because of disposal of garbage and substances to the water resources. So mainly because of the water pollution, my dear children, aquatic organisms will not be able to survive. So aquatic organisms will die. Upon dying these aquatic organisms, right, improper smell will come out, and these water sources will get destroyed for sure. Then the other organisms who are living in that particular reservoirs or particular water sources, they would catch up with different kinds of diseases. So when these diseases are going to spread, all the other organisms who are living on that particular area or living in that living by feeding on those organisms will also get those will get those kinds of diseases and illnesses. So that would create a terrible condition for the balance in the environment. Okay, so this is about the water pollution, just only about the water pollution, my dear children. There are plenty more things related to the environment pollution. I'm just giving out a brief so that you can create this thing. Okay, you can please try to find out even more things rather than these things. Okay, then the next one, overuse of resources in the environment. Overuse of resources. So when you overusing resources in the environment, one day there can be some certain types of resources which are going to disappear, or they're going to be limited. They're going to be right? Limited. There can be limited resources. These resources are also referred as non-renewable energy sources, okay, or non-renewable resources. For a simple example, we can take fossil fuel. So fossil fuel with a certain near future, right? Fossil fuel, the amount of fossil fuel that we receive is going to reduce, going to limit. So nowadays, my dear children, we overuse these fossil fuels. There are plenty of vehicles running all around the world by using fossil fuels. So within near future, the entire fossil fuel mines are going to disappear. In that case, my dear children, what will happen? We won't be able to run these vehicles which are running from fossil fuel. Okay. So what's the main reason? The main reason is overuse, right? We are mining, and we are taking. So there is no limit, right? There is no limit for it. So overuse means that. Okay. That's for a simple example. There are other examples as well. So you try to find out these examples by going through with different sources. Okay. Then the next one given, depletion of ozone layer and climatic changes. So depletion of ozone layer would create a terrible problem. Because of depletion of ozone layer, ultraviolet rays, harmful sun rays, will come to our planet Earth, and it will create certain complications among animals, plants, and also in human beings as well. So skin cancers, destruction of forests, plants, right? Those things can occur because of the ultraviolet rays, right? So other climatic changes like global warming. When you take global warming, now animals like polar bear will not be able to survive because of the global warming. Those organisms will eradicate. They have the threat to they have a threat to extinction, okay, because of the global warming. Because, my dear children, glaciers and the ice areas are going to disappear, or gradually these things are getting dissolved and collected to seawater. Seawater level is going to rise. In that case, smaller islands are also going to submerge in water, right? And when dissolving these glaciers and other icy areas, polar bears will not be able to survive, because polar bears are adapted to live on those extreme cold environments. We won't be able to observe polar bears in near equator regions, because they have adapted. They have a long thick fur, right? And they have a large fat amount in the body. So those adaptations are to like maintain a good heat insulation so that they would never release, or say so that they can release very less amount of heat energy to the environment. Okay, so if they come to like these places like equator countries, they won't be able to survive with their body adaptations. Okay, so reduction of icy areas created a certain threat for the extinction of polar bear. Okay, so main reason is global warming. So global warming occurs mainly because of the environmental problems such as environmental pollution, release of greenhouse gases, and so on. Okay, right. So I have explained each and every category which is given here, my dear children. You find out even more information regarding these things. How does these factors, or how does these topics would create a threat to the biodiversity? Okay, so my dear children, we have discussed about the importance of biodiversity and as well as some threats that would destroy or that would degrade the biodiversity. Okay, so with that part, I'm going to finish up the second chapter. Now in our next chapter, we'll discuss even more things related with our lesson.
To watch these important lessons, subscribe to DP Education's YouTube channel right now. Click on the bell icon to stay updated on the latest lessons. Sri Lanka's largest free online school, DP Education.